Just off of Gatlinburg's main drag, and after a couple of twists and turns, you'll pull up to the Greenbrier.
Back in the 30s, the building itself was used for passerbyers, I guess as a lodge.
General Manager Rachel Saltz explains there's one guest who has never checked out. She was a bride. Her name is Lydia.
On the day of their wedding, she went to the altar and he never showed. Well, she was heartbroken. She came back to the lodge. She took a rope upstairs to the second floor and then threw it over the beam right here and hung herself. You can see a little rope burn right through the middle.
Lydia thought she was stood up. In reality, her fiance just couldn't get there.
A couple days later, he was actually found to be mauled by an animal.
Even though the couple is long gone, people can sometimes still see and hear Lydia.
Her cries were heard, especially workers when they were working on the building. But I guess it was her cries of love is what they kind of described it as. I've even had some customers say they saw a woman on the stairs and they'll turn around and there's nobody there.
Just recently, a medium delivered a strong message from Lydia to those in charge.
Boy, it sure is noisy outside. Actually, probably too noisy considering this is another haunt season vlog. But anyway, what's up you guys? Chet-Guthrie the Dream Poet here, coming to you all with another addition into my haunt season series. And today guys, I am right outside the historic Gatlinburg Inn. If you all do not know, the historic Gatlinburg Inn was the site of a very famous bluegrass song. Now that bluegrass song, of course, being Rocky Top. You see, it was written sometime in the 50s by Felice and Baudelaire Bryant on the 3rd floor of this building. And did you all know, Rocky Top was only written in about 15 minutes. But aside from the story of Rocky Top, we are here to talk about the haunted hotels of Gatlinburg. Now some of these hotels, they no longer stand. In fact, they have not stood in quite some time. However, their ghostly residents still remain. In fact, there is a hotel, or what was the site of a hotel. It was called the Rocky Top Inn. And actually, this hotel was owned by the couple who created Rocky Top. And this hotel, it was in operation for about 34 years. But in the 1980s, a horrible murder happened that affected this entire tourist town. So anyway, guys, let's get to it. Let's get to another haunt season vlog. Let's head to where the Rocky Top Inn once stood. So let's do it. And get away from that noise. Right here, where this Marriott is now, this is where the Rocky Top Village Inn once stood. And now that we are here, right where this inn used to be, this infamous inn, we can talk about the ghost story associated with the land, not so much the building. It all started in September of 1986 when Tattoo Harris and his other two criminal friends, Rufus Dobie and Joseph DeMonica, were making their ways along the countryside, trying to find a place to live. You see, all three of these men, they had lived in prison most of their lives. And at this point, they were really just trying to find a place to go. All three of these men had befriended each other while they were in jail. And when they all got out, this was their life. And what they would do is they would go along the countryside, they would rob these businesses, and they would rob these other places, and that's how they would make ends meet. They would also murder other people. There are other instances of them murdering people in Knoxville and other places. Now, as they were making their way along the countryside, the Rocky Top Village Inn would be their next stop. They would come here, they would rent a room for the night, they would meet 21-year-old Melissa Hill, who was the night clerk here at the time. And now, Drufus, as he also was known as Ashley Silvers, he came out as a trans individual a few years back, but he befriended Melissa Hill. He got to know her very well, and this is where the murder begins. You see, Tattoo Harris and Joseph DeMonica, they will go and they will murder Melissa Hill. She will be sitting in the ticket booth office doing her job. It's in the middle of the night, and that's when they stab her over 18 times. Now, Melissa's husband, he will try to get a hold of her. He will make his nightly phone call, and to his bewilderment, to his surprise, she does not answer. He calls again, nothing. So he calls in security, and Troy Valentine, he will come to the scene. Now, DeMonica and Tattoo Harris, they will murder him as well. You see, they'll tie him up. He will get away briefly, and he will get to another room at this inn. Now, since they do catch up to him, they do stab him like they did Melissa. But unlike her horrible fate where she bled out, they would go and shoot him right between the eyes. Now, lucky enough, these three individuals will be brought to justice for these murders. And it stops over where the Rocky Top Inn and Villages used to be, where this Marriott now stands. But now to get to the actual ghost story. You see, some time ago, the Rocky Top Village Inn was torn down and it was replaced by this Marriott. Now, if you believe in the paranormal, usually if you believe that the building is torn down, it means that the spirits are no more. They are no longer there. However, this is not the case with this Marriott. You see, it mostly takes place in this parking lot here. Many people have seen Troy Valentine and Melissa Hill here in this parking lot. They will be standing there 1 minute and they will be gone the next. Some other strange occurrences that have gone on at this hotel right here is that in the middle of the night, when it is absolutely quiet throughout Gatlinburg, they will hear a bloody scream. Loud screams, horrible shrieks, as if somebody is getting stabbed. Now, with it being Gatlinburg, you'd probably think, well, that's probably just somebody messing around. But law enforcement has been called out here before, and they have found nothing. There's no one in pain, no one getting hurt, and it always seems to happen in the parking lot of this hotel right here, where the Rocky Top Inn Villages, or the Rocky Top Village Inn once stood. It's very creepy, but it does make you wonder if you come out with paranormal equipment and do a little bit of ghost hunting in this parking lot. Now, just up the hill from where the Rocky Top Villages Inn was at one point, there is another infamously haunted hotel that once stood along this stretch of road right here. And that was known as the Garden Plaza Hotel. Now in the early 2000s, this is where the Garden Plaza Hotel once stood. And also it was a series of Holiday Inns that was here on this stretch of land right here. It was a pretty big deal back in the day for Holiday Inn. They had a conference center. They had another, they called it the Holodome that was on this property. And of course you had the main hotel itself, which stood where this Hampton Inn does now. Now there are two rooms I want to focus on in particular with where this hotel once stood. And that are rooms 413 and 471. How ironic that both of these ghost stories happened on the 4th floor of this old hotel, or series of hotels owned by the same company. The first one we will want to focus on is 471. 471, sometime in the 70s, there was a gentleman. He was a businessman. He was in on business. And anyway, one of the ladies that worked at this former site, she told him not to go to the pool just because it was unattended and it was late at night. Well, a few days go by. The people at the front desk, they notice that this man has not checked out. Like, the days are going on, bills are adding up. So they do a courtesy check of his room. And what they find is something horrific. You see, they found in his hand a .357 Magnum, and sadly he had unalived himself. I could say something else, but I know YouTube is pretty big on their policies, but let's just say he unalived himself. And of all things, he left about $3.50 on the table. But after this took place at 471, people would notice some very strange things happening in this room. They would see a figure standing over their bedside. They would feel the temperature of the room change. And in the pool nearby, where this clerk told this businessman not to go anywhere near at night, strangely enough, a shadowy figure tends to walk along this pool right here, or what I am believing is probably the original pool to the complex, or at least I'd like to think so. But it's just very, oh, how do you say, very off-putting. Now this next tragic event that took place July 29th of 1980, it happened with two girls. They were both 16 and 17, and they were coming home from one of the girls' grandmother's homes. One's name was Jenny, the other was Tanya. Tanya was the one whose grandmother they had come to visit. While they were on their way back from their grandmother's, they stayed at the Garden Plaza Hotel. Now these girls, they had a bit of a wild side. They wanted to get in and do something fun, you know, have a little bit of fun with the night on the town. And that's what they do. Now, I don't know how the next part happens, but they go into a bar and they meet a mysterious man. And this mysterious man, they bring back to their room at room 413. But as Tanya, I believe it was Jenny, went to go use the bathroom, she stepped out. The sight that she came back to see was again horrifying. You see, whoever this mysterious man was, he had murdered Jenny, or he had murdered Tanya. Very frantic, she sees the man, she runs from him, she goes up the next stairs, or the next set of stairs I should say, which that is a horrible mistake on her part because she can't get to the top of the roof. And so she is left there with the murderer. And sadly enough, he stabs her. Now these two girls, they are buried somewhere. I'm not terribly sure where they're buried, but that is just some of the stories associated of where the Garden Plaza Hotel once stood. And of course, there's nothing really that's left here from the time. There were 2 kitchens left here that had a lot of activity that went on in them. Some say he was a chef. He had worked for the Garden Plaza Hotel for about 30 years, up until they bought him a boat. And well, the company bought him a boat as a form of a retirement present, but let's just say he drowned. They never found him. But after all this took place in the kitchen of the Garden Plaza Hotel, all these strange events would take place. A lot of poltergeist activity. Stuff would get thrown off the shelves. People would see shadows while working in the kitchen. Some believe this man had not left. And now that I have covered 2 hotels that are no longer here or in existence, we will stop at a place that still stands. Now, right now, it is not a hotel, but it was a bed and breakfast back in the 1930s. Around 1934, I believe it was. And would say there was another young lady who unalived herself, as we shall say here in the YouTube community. Now, it is a restaurant now, and everything is still there. So anyway, guys, let's go there. Let's do it. Now, while we were on our way to the Greenbrier restaurant, I figured, you know what, we would stop by the mysterious mansion. Now, I know it's not so much of a haunted hotel, but there is a couple of ghost stories associated with this haunted house. By the way, this haunted house is the oldest one in Gatlinburg, but the 2 stories associated with this building is there was once a house that used to stand where this building does now, and there was the spirit of a little girl that fell out of the 2nd story balcony. And it said, usually around the anniversary of her death, she is seen from this building falling over and screaming. Now, authorities have been called before with this happening, only to no avail. There's no one there. Also, cast members that work here at the Mysterious Mansion, they've also said that there is a shadowy figure that follows them back into the dressing room, which is, I'm believing, is probably right around this way. But I figured, you know what, while we're at it, we would talk about this just very briefly. Now let's get on to the restaurant. Now, for a little bit more history on the Greenbrier Inn, well, now Greenbrier Restaurant. This was a bed and breakfast that was constructed in 1939. 1939 always seems to be a good year for some reason, especially with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. In the 30s, you know, that was the height, or I should say, I mean, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is still at the height of its peak, because it is the most visited national park in the entirety of the United States. But we don't want to get related too much into history, because it was in 1939 that a woman by the name of Margaretta Gregg came here to the bed and breakfast. You see, she was a bride-to-be. She was about to get married. She was happy, she was ready. But when her wedding day came, all those days ago in 1939, her husband, he didn't show. She waited, she waited. She waited at the altar until she realized he's not coming. So Margaretta, sad enough, she goes into the second story of this building, and she hangs herself. Now, fast forward into the future, This building is now a restaurant, a pretty nice restaurant, might I add. Many of the people call Margaretta Lydia. However, her legal name is Margaretta Craig. So anyway, you guys, let's go up to that floor. The beam is still there where she unalived herself. So let's go check it out. Okay guys, right here, it was in this room where this happened. And I just thought it was very interesting that this is the cross beam that she unalived herself from. So a lot of people here at the restaurant, they do see a mysterious figure wandering the building, especially upstairs. I went upstairs to see if there was like anything there. As the story goes, it was the second floor that she did this from, but there's not really a whole lot of anything there. So anyway, guys, let's get out of here. Anyway, you guys, that was a rather fun experience. Now, I would have eaten here tonight to really just see what the place is all about. But much like the Halloween season, in this place's prices, they were charging about $50 for a steak, and I don't know about that. That's just about as scary as Lydia's ghost, or Margaretta Craig's ghost. But anyway, guys, remember, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Always means a lot. Goes to show that y'all care and that y'all want to see more awesome videos. So without further ado, you guys, this vlog is over.